welcome back. You are listening to Nate the Hate on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And with that, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Modern Vintage Gamer.
What's going on, Nate? It's great to be here. I'm enjoying a very fine weekend. How are you doing? And what are we going to talk about today?
I am doing well. I am currently preparing for an incoming heat wave that will be hitting the area in just a few more days. So I'm going to get the fans, oscillating and the windows open, and I will be hoping for a nice cool sea breeze during the evening hour so I don't sweat from the humidity and the mugginess that the heat wave will, of course, bring the great Ocean State area. But we're going to be talking about the Nintendo Direct and giving some of our predictions and thoughts of what Nintendo and the third-party partners could potentially bring the show, as this will be the first general Direct of 2024 following a partner Direct, which began the year back in February, where we saw a variety of titles from third-party partners, including Microsoft, where they had officially announced Pentiment and Grounded for the Nintendo Switch. And we also saw a number of other smaller titles like Endless Ocean making a return to the Switch. But there's a lot of anticipation around this coming general Nintendo Direct because Nintendo has kind of a significant release that we haven't had any meaningful update on in a number of years, and that is Retro Studios' Metroid Prime 4. And a lot of people are going into this Direct with that expectation that we will finally get a substantial update regarding that game. But naturally, there are other games that also need updates, and you have the third-party partners who are, you have to imagine they're eager to give updates or some new announcements of their own. And we're going to give some of our thoughts of what we think could be at this upcoming Nintendo Direct. And there's also that possibility that this will be the final Nintendo Direct for the Nintendo Switch itself, as Nintendo did outline earlier this year that the Nintendo Switch 2 is due for an official announcement sometime this fiscal year, which concludes in March of 2025. And so far, as of this moment, Nintendo has not given any further details, but they did specify that we would not be hearing of the Switch 2 in this June Direct.
Well, that's an interesting point that this could potentially be the last Nintendo Switch Focus Direct. But I mean, I think there still is going to be Switch-related news content in future Nintendo Directs, right? I mean, I think, we'll see what they've done, with the Wii U and the 3DS. There's still going to be some segment of games, I think, that would still come out for the Switch on a Direct. Or are you saying that we would not see any more Direct after they do actually release the next hardware?
No, we'll definitely have a cross-generational period where they will still have Switch games. But right now,
so.
This feels as though this will be the last potential Nintendo Direct that will be Switch exclusively before we do see that transitional period over to that Switch 2 period where they will share the Direct spotlight with Switch 2 and Switch games. But with no Switch 2 news in this upcoming Direct, there's just that high probability that this could potentially be that swan song in terms of Switch exclusive Directs. But a lot of that is reliant on the exact timing of the Switch 2 itself and when Nintendo does finally unveil the Switch 2, because if we go based on history, there is definitely the anticipation and expectation that we will have a Nintendo Direct sometime in September around Tokyo Game Show. And if the Switch 2 has not yet been fully revealed by then, that Direct could easily be Switch 2 focus or Switch focused as we continue to wait for the Switch 2. So a lot of it is reliant on when Nintendo pulls back the curtain on the Switch 2, when we will finally get the concluding Switch exclusive Direct. So it's either this one or it's going to be the one in September, but it's just purely reliant on when the Switch 2 is formally announced and unveiled.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see. I mean, this Nintendo Direct, the one we're talking about today, I think I say this every time we predict an episode, but this has to be the most difficult one to predict because the way that it's been set up means that we really are going into this with not much visibility as far as what Nintendo could surprise us with. what we'll see from third parties. But we have sat down, we've compiled a list which we think is a good one, and we'll see how it all feels at the end.
You see, that's the interesting thing, as you mentioned, is that there isn't much visibility going into this Nintendo Direct. And a lot of that uncertainty and cloud comes from the Switch 2 itself. When you look at third-party partners who were at the Sony State of Play, they were at the Microsoft June Showcase, they were part of Summer Games Fest, you had these prestigious companies headline and premiere brand new games, and many of them are currently skipping the Switch 1 because they're very ambitious projects. They are, they're in development for PS5 and Xbox Series as their main platforms, and those games just are not possible to be downported to the current Switch. So when you look at a lot of Nintendo's very loyal partners, seeing them begin to focus on those next generation machines, it's just natural that the Switch is going to be left behind. And even when you look at Nintendo's own software pipeline, Nintendo's development teams are now prioritizing the Switch 2 over the current Switch. So naturally, a new 3D Mario game or anything of grand ambition is going to be in development for the Switch 2. But where does that leave the Switch?
Mm-hmm.
It leaves it in a very kind of a limbo-esque position. It's still going to get some quality games, some of which we're going to discuss today in the predictions episode, but it also makes predictions very difficult because you have to have in the back of your mind the Switch 2 expectation. Are these games going to be cross-generational? Would Nintendo potentially pivot and delay a game into 2025 to make a cross-generational version of a game if they feel as though it could potentially have an impact on Switch 2 sales, or even for the game to get greater sales by being positioned in a launch window of new hardware? All of these factors come into play when you're looking at these games. And when you look at it from like a mathematical or an equational standpoint, you could definitely make a case for the majority of games coming out later this year of whether or not they could have been held back into 2025 to be positioned in a launch window for the Switch 2. But it all comes down to the caliber of the game. And one of those will certainly be getting that type of discussion later on in the episode. But this does apply to third parties as well. And I think it's going to be reflected in our third party predictions, as we did have a cumbersome time coming up with a very thorough list, because when we look at the partners Nintendo traditionally rolls out in these Nintendo Directs, there was a grand recognition that these development partners are focusing on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series now. They're not really doing lesser releases that would be possible on the Switch. And that's made our predictions very difficult, but we'll let the listener decide if our predictions have some merit and base, or if they're just maybe a little too pessimistic for their own good.
Well, let's jump in. What do we got? What are we doing?
Well, first, let's start with the third parties. And let's start with Sega. They're a very loyal partner, and they always have something on, there's always something to show from them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think Sega it's one that they usually do show up at a Nintendo Direct. We've seen it happen. I think, I don't want to do the numbers, but I believe they've been at least in every one of recent times that I can recall. But in any case, they will show up at this Nintendo Direct. The one that stands out for me, obviously, is the Sonic Shadow Generations game that will probably make an appearance at this showcase. Well, at this Direct, I should say.
Yeah, I think the Sonic game is a definitely good fit for the Nintendo Direct because it is Sonic. Sonic has traditionally sold exceptionally well on Nintendo platform. And this is a Sonic game that has a lot of momentum behind it. A lot of people are excited about it. They're curious as to how the Shadow content will be fleshed out.
Mm-hmm.
And Sonic Generations was a good game when it came out about a decade ago. So I think that is a good fit here. Another good fit from Sega is a title that was recently rated in Europe, and it is Sega's House of the Dead 2, developed by Forever Entertainment. They had done a remake of the original House of the Dead game, and it got a mixed reception. It had some frame rate issues, and the aiming reticule would also automatically jump to center even if you were aiming it in a lower corner before a cutscene. some of these issues were ironed out, but the lack of a light gun definitely was felt here. And this is a game that's been a long time in the making, and it being at the Nintendo Direct definitely kind of fits historic trends where Forever Entertainment has headlined and premiered one of their new releases in a Nintendo Direct. So seeing House of the Dead 2 make an appearance in this Direct makes a lot of sense to me.
Yes.
And I really wouldn't be too surprised if the game was a shadow drop or released very soon after the Direct. And I'm talking maybe within a month or so, because that's kind of what we have seen from previous Forever Entertainment games as well.
Yeah, I like House of the Dead 2 remake for this. There is definitely some history, some precedent there with the original House of the Dead remake on a Nintendo Direct years ago, a couple of years ago now. I don't remember exactly when it came out. So yeah, this is a good one. It was just recently rated, as you said. I think there's a bit of smoke here. So I like it for this Nintendo Direct. And Forever and Nintendo have, I don't know, they seem to like each other. So for whatever reason, Forever seems to have an in with Nintendo as far as getting their stuff in directs. So yeah, I like it for this.
Yeah, beyond these two games, I really couldn't think much more from Sega or even Sega Atlas, just given their recent output. Atlas has Metaphor coming out later this year. It's not coming to Switch.
So no Skies of Arcadia then is what I'm hearing, Nate.
Did anyone have hopes of Skies of Arcadia?
I think a lot of people do, but I think that's really more hopes and dreams than anything else, I would say.
I mean, I will fully endorse that hope and dream because I would love for Skies of Arcadia HD to make an appearance at a Nintendo Direct. But it just feels like one of those games that I just cannot really envision Sega ever doing it. They know people want it, but at the same time, when's the last time you played Skies of Arcadia?
Well, other than making some content, on a YouTube video, maybe showing off some visuals for whatever reason, the last time I actually sat down to play that game was probably when I had my Dreamcast. I never played the GameCube version, even though I do have the GameCube version. So it was when the Dreamcast version came out. And that was, oh my God, 2000 maybe?
Yeah, so I mean, we're looking at 20 plus years ago.
Yeah.
And the reason I asked that question is I'm sure you have very fond memories of Vice and Friends, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But there's one aspect of the game that would need complete reworking, and that is the random battle system. Because there are segments of that game where once you resumed control of your party, you would take half a pixel step and be entered into a new combat situation.
Yeah.
The game had an overbearing amount of battles that was slightly retooled when it came to the GameCube, but they would have to go back and rework that and really just limit the amount of random battles you can get in a designated section because that game was brutal in some areas with the amount of combat that it would have. Thankfully, the combat system was very entertaining, but when you're playing the game for 20 minutes and somehow end up in 50 battles, it can become kind of draining.
Yeah. It definitely needs some work, I think, if they were going to bring it back. But we're talking about games that won't even be at this Direct.
Yeah, that's true. So let us go to Ubisoft, who typically does have some sort of presence in Nintendo Directs, but honestly, I'm not anticipating Ubisoft to have any meaningful presence in this Nintendo Direct. They just had their own showcase just a week prior, and they detailed the games coming out in 2024, some of the new content coming to titles such as X Defiant, and then you have Assassin's Creed Shadows. You have the Star Wars Outlaw game. You have not Sea of Thieves, the Skull and Bones.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then you have the Prince of Persia game coming out in 2026. So there was nothing that they had headlined there at their own show that was pertinent to the Switch. And I think it's just because their current software library doesn't have anything for the Switch. So I'm going into this with no expectation of Ubisoft showing up with anything meaningful. Maybe we get a smaller tier game along the lines of something like a Valiant Hearts type of thing. But beyond that, I have no expectation for the company. Do you have anything?
You know what, Nate? I do have a prediction for this Nintendo Direct. I think Ubisoft, even though they did have their presentation and they basically showed their hand as to what they were doing. Remember back in 2012, Nate, at E3, when we saw a game from Ubisoft that just blew everyone's minds? That game was known as Watch Dogs.
Oh, dear God.
And everyone saw those visuals at that E3 presentation and they were like, this is the game I want to play. This is next generation. And somewhere along the way, that game got completely reduced down to the game that it was when it released, which wasn't a bad game. So with that, I think Ubisoft has one more trick up its sleeve. I think Watch Dogs, the first Watch Dogs game, will be announced for the Nintendo Switch. And anyone that's listening to this that's going to write articles, this is completely pulled out of nothing. So I have no inside information about this at all. But I like Watch Dogs on the Switch. So I'm going to say Watch Dogs.
Yeah, it's definitely a curious type of prediction. I would say Skies of Arcadia showing up probably has greater chances than Ubisoft porting Watch Dogs over to the Switch at this time.
I don't know, man. I would probably buy Watch Dogs on the Switch if it came out.
You and 25 other people.
25 other people that would buy Watch Dogs. Let us know in the comments. Watch Dogs needs more love. But now, you're probably right, though, Nate. Ubisoft probably won't turn up at this showcase.
Now, you see, the prior Direct, we had Microsoft show up. And as previously mentioned, they showed up with Pentiment, and they showed up with Grounded. Do you think we go for the hat trick here, and Sony shows up at this Nintendo Direct, and they give us the first look at the Switch version of Lego Horizon?
Yes, I do. I mean, we obviously know all about Lego Horizon from Summer Games Fest. It was a good announcement. But we haven't seen any Switch footage of this. And I think people would like to see a deeper dive into the Switch version. And also, this is Lego. They've got a lot of money. And I think that they probably want to get their name in a Nintendo Direct. I think Lego games have been in Directs before. I'm almost positive they have. They have. So, yeah, I think Sony... I mean, I'm assuming it's Sony. We have to assume it's Sony, correct? Does show up at this Direct with Lego Horizon. This is probably, on paper at least, probably the biggest third-party announcement of the show. And it's a pretty big one. So, yeah, I say it's there.
Okay, definitely. I mean, I think a lot of people would be interested to see these first Switch footage of Horizon.
I mean, it is releasing this year, correct?
It is releasing later this year. It is an Unreal Engine 5 game. So this could definitely be a showcase visually for the Switch, depending how well optimized the game is for the platform. And you would have to imagine it is going to be well optimized. I don't think Sony is going to come out with some half-assed version of the game, because they have in interviews recognized the significant value that bringing this game to Switch has for them and the brand, not just the PlayStation brand, but also the Horizon brand. So I would definitely be interested in seeing the first direct feed footage of Lego Horizon on Switch. And I think the Direct would be a fantastic place to really emphasize the game on the platform to the Nintendo audience who wouldn't have watched the Sony State of Play or even Summer Games Fest, to just illustrate, hey, you're getting a Sony game. You're getting a Sony IP on the platform. It's in the Nintendo Direct. And I just think it would be pretty funny for Nintendo to be the only company of the three console manufacturers to have titles from both Sony and Microsoft be headlined in a Nintendo Direct. I think that is worthy of headlines in and of itself if this does take place.
Absolutely. Also, I just remembered the partnership Nintendo and Lego have right now with the Zelda model that was recently announced.
Yes.
Lego and Nintendo, they love each other. There is this game. Look, I'm not saying you can never really say anything is a lock in a Direct, but for me, this feels like as close to a lock as possible. I'm all in on Lego Horizon, Nate. All in on it.
Now, there's been another company who's been making headlines recently, and it is Square Enix. Now, Square Enix had a very nice Xbox showcase where they announced a brand new Life is Strange, which is a direct sequel to the first Life is Strange, as Maxine Caulfield will resume as the main character. And there's also been rumors and leaks suggesting that Dragon Quest 1 through 3 are getting the HD treatment and they will be in the Nintendo Direct. But naturally, there will be other games from Square Enix. And there is one game I am personally aware of and can say is in the Nintendo Direct. And I think it's going to excite a lot of people because Sakaguchi is coming home. Mistwalker's own Sakaguchi is partnering with Square Enix so they can publish Fantasian on console.
Now, this is a pretty hype announcement for me. This is the game that came out on Apple Arcade, correct? That never was kind of locked on Apple Arcade. I always wanted to play this game, but I never wanted to invest in Apple Arcade to play it. So I'm on board with this announcement. And this may actually be something. Look, I'm not a big RPG guy. The last one I really played was Live Alive. Is that right? I mean, I did play Baldur's Gate 3 as well. But yeah, I mean, you get what I'm trying to say. It's been a while since I've kind of sunk my teeth into a JRPG like that. Fantasian on the Switch, I'm all about it. So I'm going to will this one into existence. You're saying it's a thing. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is a thing. Fantasian will be announced at the Nintendo Direct. And I think it's a really interesting development that Square Enix is going to be the one publishing Fantasian for console because, as we know, Mistwalker was found by former Square Enix employees due to disputes between them on a creative level and even a business level. So for Sakaguchi to be working with Square Enix again is definitely an interesting development, and I will be curious if there will be some in-depth reporting and such to get behind what exactly happened here to make this deal possible, because Mistwalker had self-published it on Apple Arcade. So it's kind of curious that Mistwalker wasn't capable of either finding another partner to publish this on consoles or didn't self-publish it themselves on these platforms. And it is a multi-platform release. It will be coming to Switch, PlayStation, and Xbox. So any platform you own, you will be able to play Fantasian this year. And I will personally be there day one when Fantasian becomes available.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out myself. Like I said, it's something that I always wanted to play, but was never able to.
Now, there's been some other Square Enix games kind of making headlines in the last few days as well, partly due to a Epic Game Store database leak, which had listed some titles. And the titles that were mentioned, naturally, of course, are Final Fantasy IX Remake and Final Fantasy Tactics. And these are two games that people have consistently requested updates on, dating back to the GeForce leak when Final Fantasy Tactics and Final Fantasy IX were originally mentioned. And these are two games that will not be in this Nintendo Direct. Right now, I don't think anyone really has a grasp as to when these titles will be announced. All I can say is these two titles exist. They will one day release, but they are not in this Nintendo Direct. So we just have to keep waiting. Hopefully the wait is worth it, because I know a lot of people love Final Fantasy IX. I am not personally a huge fan of Final Fantasy IX, but I do love Final Fantasy Tactics, be it Final Fantasy Tactics on PS1, War of the Lions on PSP, or even Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. I loved playing that game on the Game Boy Advance back in the day. Wasn't that big on Final Fantasy Tactics Advance 2, but I will never say no to more Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yeah, I agree. FF9, it's fine, but it's definitely not my favorite. Tactics is definitely my thing, so I'm right there with you. Give me Tactics on the Switch. I'd be very happy if that got announced.
Yeah, I mean, one day it will. Just not going to be anytime soon. Beyond that, from Square Enix, I'm kind of just anticipating maybe something smaller, maybe from a lesser franchise, be it Mana or Romancing Saga, something of that tier. But I think Fantasian is going to be kind of the big announcement, and that's going to be something that a lot of people are going to be exceptionally excited for, because again, Mistwalker Sakaguchi's coming back to Square Enix in at least this publishing capacity for this one game. And as you mentioned, it was an Apple Arcade exclusive previously. Not many people played it. And for it to be coming to console, this is going to be a delicacy for RPG fans because the game was very well received on Apple Arcade. A lot of hype around it, nothing but universal praise. And now just a much larger fan base is going to finally get that opportunity to see what the game is all about. So that announcement alone makes me very excited for the Direct. But naturally, there are still other indie and third-party announcements that could be made. And I'm going to go with one that I'm surprised the Switch version had not been mentioned alongside the Xbox version. And that is Kena, or Kina, however you want to pronounce the game. Even in the game itself, the pronunciation of her name changed. But Kena was announced as an August release for the Xbox Series. And at one point in time, there was a Switch version of this game in development. Now, the fact that it hasn't been announced yet, maybe it's no longer in development for the Switch. Maybe development is taking longer. Maybe they have shelved the Switch version and have now transitioned development over to the Switch 2. I do not know, but it was in development for the Switch, and I'm hoping the Switch version could show up here at the Nintendo Direct and come out later this year because the Xbox version is. So maybe they were just holding off for the announcement to be in a Nintendo Direct.
I like Kena for the Switch. And it's a good announcement for kind of the twilight of the system. So why not? Give us Kena. Same time as Xbox. Yeah, I think makes a lot of sense. And I think it would show really well on the Switch as well. So yeah, it's a definitely good prediction.
Are you ready to break out the clown makeup?
Oh God. Why do we punish ourselves every time? You know, the definition of insanity is repeating the same thing over and over again.
You're right, that is the definition of insanity, and that's why we are going to change. Hollow Knight Silksong, you will not be here.
Agree. Silksong doesn't exist.
You know what? I'm beginning to agree with you. It didn't show up at the Xbox showcase, which would have been the opportune time for it to show up, because Microsoft would have loved to have that at their showcase to emphasize it is a Game Pass Day 1 game, that it would be coming out later this year. And despite the game having received ratings in Australia and South Korea and store pages where you can wishlist the game, it continues to elude everybody. And I no longer believe Hollow Knight Silksong is a real thing. It was a fever dream we all had. And Team Cherry took the money from Microsoft and they ran. Yep. They have fled Australia. Yep. They are in Antarctica.
No,
penguins.
They bought surfboards and they went surfing. You know?
Well, it's time for the kangaroos to track them down. Get the wallabies and the dingo. Find them and demand the answers. And I get it. You're a small team. The game probably just isn't ready to be shown and given a release date.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have no faith in it being at this Nintendo Direct.
There's a better chance of Watch Dogs showing up at this Direct than Silksong.
You're right.
Yep. Look, I don't know what else to say about Silksong. Every year we fall into this trap. And look, we may take the biggest L on this, but I'm sticking to my guns, Nate. I'm with you. Team Cherry, they've left the building.
Yeah, they're gone. They're with Elvis. They have left the building, and one day the game will show up. But by going in with no anticipation or expectation of Silksong being there, I can be pleasantly surprised if it is there. It won't be, but at least I can be surprised if it is.
Yes.
But again, it won't be. So, oh, Silksong, one day you will show up. When? Nobody knows. I don't even know if Team Cherry knows when that game's going to show up again.
I don't think they know.
But, keeping to the Apple Arcade trend set by Fantasian, I'm going to make a random prediction. I'm going to say Hello Kitty Island Adventure is going to be in this Nintendo Direct and announced for the Switch.
That sounds very specific to me rather than random.
Nah, Hello Kitty is very popular. I think Hello Kitty has a couple of Switch games already. It's on Apple Arcade. Are people playing and buying games on Apple Arcade? I feel like the publishers are finally realizing, let's bring them over. We've already seen Sega bring over some of their Apple Arcade stuff to consoles, so keep it coming. Let's see Hello Kitty, very popular brand. Make it happen.
I'm going to just roll with you on this one and say, yep, Hello Kitty. Let's do it.
I'm also going to go with another random mobile game. And it's only because we got to see Metal Slug Tactics very recently. Again, it looks fantastic. And there's a mobile Metal Slug game called Metal Slug Attack.
I love it. I mean,
I want more Metal Slug.
Yeah, dude, Metal Slug is awesome. I would buy anything Metal Slug right now. If they dropped a collection of 1, 2, 3, 4 games that I already have on my Neo Geo system, I would buy that collection. Games that already exist, I believe, as those like single downloadables that you can get. I'm pretty sure Metal Slug's on there on those arcade classics. Anyway, I would buy a collection of Metal Slug games.
Well, you see, Metal Slug Attack is kind of like a tower defense game.
Yeah, but that sounds really cool. So I'm on board with that.
So you know what? Like that's why I just want more Metal Slug. That's a thing that hasn't come to consoles, so make it happen. Bring it over. Why not? And you know, my final just random indie tier thing is a game that got rated 3 months ago for the Switch that we haven't had any official announcement regarding, and it's Darkest Dungeon 2.
This one's not a bad prediction to make. I totally forgot about this game, to be honest. I like Darkest Dungeon 2.
I had to dig deep. I was like, let's see what some random Switch games that got rated that just haven't been announced. And this one was about 3 months ago. So let's go Darkest Dungeon. Time to shine some light on you. But that's all I could think of for third party and indie games. Not exactly the most exciting list of games right there.
Not the most stellar of third parties at this Direct.
You trying to hint at Stellar Blade for Switch?
No, definitely not. Maybe for the Switch too, one day I could see it, but I don't think it'll make on the Switch.
Yeah, I mean, it just comes back to what we had said earlier. It's really difficult to come up with a comprehensive list of what we could see from third parties and even indie studios, because that transition period into PS5 and Xbox Series is just full on underway now. That cross-gen period is beginning to expire, and knowing that these games can't be downported to the Switch makes the predictions just more challenging, because under a different situation, let's say the Switch 2 had already been announced and they were going to have Switch 2 third-party software on hand here, you could look at a partner like a Capcom and say, oh, you know, Monster Hunter Wilds would make a lot of sense here.
Yeah.
But given that we don't have that luxury of Switch 2 or even making Switch 2 related predictions of what third-party partners may be bringing to the platform, it really limits what one could come up with in terms of predictions here. Hence, things like Metal Slug Attack and Hello Kitty.
Yeah.
Just random games that definitely make sense to come over to the Switch from a mobile and iOS platform, because there is sales potential on a family-friendly system like the Switch. But it was definitely challenging to come up with that list, and people are probably shaking their heads saying, what the hell type of third-party indie predictions was that?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good one.
But with that means we go into the first party segment of the show and what Nintendo could potentially bring here. And I want to start with a classic, a game that has come up time and time again in some of our predictions. And last year we had a revisit to the franchise for the first time in, over, I think, around 20 years when F-Zero 99 was announced for NSO, a fantastic game, one of my favorite games of 2023, and even now in 2024 as it continues to get new content with more cups. F-Zero GX.
Oh, yeah. F-Zero GX. I mean, we're running out of time here for this F-Zero game. 99 was very, very good. Great game. And I think you kind of had some thought maybe the 99 game was just to test the market a little bit, get people remembering everything about F-Zero and what it was all about, preparing themselves for something else.
The franchise, get people ready.
I think I like GX for, and I'm assuming it's GX. It could be anything F-Zero related, but maybe I'll say something F-Zero at this direct. But the good money is on GX. GX is such a great game. Like, I don't know why you wouldn't bring that to the Switch. It is, I think, top 3 one of the best looking GameCube games that just holds up so well visually. It already has a 16:9 widescreen mode in the GameCube version. It already runs at 60 frames per second. It already has some type of online, multiplayer type modes. I think a remaster of this game with some nice little quality of life just makes so much sense. And it's almost the perfect game to bring out now when the Switch is kind of obviously in its, last year of its life, or at least, in this capacity before new hardware comes out or gets announced. I like GX, Nate, and I want to see it. So let's bring it. So this direct is going to have it, I think.
I'm definitely going in with the prediction of something related to F-Zero, be it GX or just anything F-Zero, a new game, whatever. But my hope is an F-Zero GX remaster.
The only hesitation I have with you saying that is if they announce a Game Boy Advance version on the NSO, there's your out. So I need a little bit more than something F-Zero at this direct from you.
Well, I think, didn't F-Zero Game Boy Advance already come to NSO?
But there's 2 of them, isn't there?
There is, yes. All right, a Switch F-Zero game.
Okay, I like that.
How's that? An F-Zero game for the Switch, not an NSO type of release.
Yeah, that works for me. Okay. Yeah, there's 2 GBA games. There's Maximum Velocity, and I think the other one's like GP or something like that. Anyway,
yes. But yeah, something related to F-Zero, a new release, because F-Zero 99 definitely wasn't just a random release. It was something to reintroduce the franchise to people, get people familiar with the mechanics, even maybe the characters a bit, or a new F-Zero game, be it a GX remaster or a brand new entry to the franchise, but something. And I think this direct would be just that perfect time to bring that F-Zero game forward. And again, we do run into that difficulty of, if there's a direct in September that is still primarily focused on Switch games, do you hold this release? And it just comes down to the release timing of the game in question.
Right.
But yeah, definitely bring on F-Zero again. I want more F-Zero. I don't see how anyone could say no. Now, another thing it's always been in headlines. It's been in headlines for years. Is Zelda with Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, or just Zelda in general. I know there was a rumor recently that ended up just being someone's personal speculation about a Zelda-led Zelda game. Do you think we see Zelda in any capacity at this Nintendo Direct? Because as we know, Tears of the Kingdom is not getting any DLC. And going back over the last decade or so, we have traditionally seen something Zelda come out. We do have the Zelda Lego set, which you had mentioned earlier in the episode.
Yeah.
So, do we see anything related to Zelda from Nintendo in this direct?
Yes. However, I couldn't say what it is. But I will also use the same thing that I kind of said to you, in that whatever this is not NSO related. It's something else, right? Look, the good money is Twilight Princess, Wind Waker HD. But see, I don't know. I mean, that's I've heard all sorts of stuff about those games. I've heard that both of them have been ready for years. They're in Nintendo's back pocket, waiting for the right time. Well, the right time I feel like is now for both of these games, especially with the second half of this year not looking really that stacked at the moment. But I'm not sure about Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD, Nate. This could be something they could be holding back if it does indeed exist for the next system. Or it could be a cross-platform game. So, I don't know. And then there's also the Oracle's games as well, as you mentioned. There are other Zelda games as well. There's a 3DS Zelda game that could very easily make its way to the Switch. That's a fantastic game. Link Between Worlds is a very good game. There's going to be something Zelda at this show, at this direct. I just couldn't say what it is. Like, I think a year ago I would have said Twilight Princess, Wind Waker, absolutely. Now I'm a little bit more hesitant because, it's something I feel like they should have already unveiled by now. But like I said, if they're going to unveil it, now is the time. So maybe it's that. What do you think?
I think if Zelda has any presence, it has to be something of meaning. And maybe it's just a surprise type of release that nobody could possibly predict or expect. Or it's going to be something that everyone anticipates, be it, as you mentioned, the Twilight Princess Wind Waker, or an Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons remake by Grezzo in the vein of Link's Awakening.
Yeah.
I mean, of those two, if I had to pick what I would prefer the Oracle games.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, I mean, in no way do I envision Wind Waker and Twilight Princess coming out in 2024.
Doesn't seem likely, does it?
No. And if I had to choose a Zelda game for 2024, I would go with the Oracle games. And that's just a personal, hope and dream that could happen. And I mean, I could easily see this direct having no Zelda representation at all as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it falls into one of those situations of, if there is a Zelda project in development, be it a new 2D Zelda or a remaster remake of a prior generation Zelda, do you have it come to the Switch in 2024, or is it a game that you make a cross-gen release with the Switch 2 sometime in 2025? And you just kind of find yourself in that conundrum. And that's where I find myself right now when it comes to predicting any Zelda representation in a June Direct in 2024.
Yep.
Again, if Zelda shows up, I would hope it's in the form of an Oracle of Ages and Seasons remaster or a remake. But, it's really hard to say. Now it's going to bring us to Mario. Do you think Mario has any representation here?
Well, just like you said with Zelda, it's very difficult with the kind of elephant in the room of the Switch 2, looming ever so closely. I'm going to say no. I don't think there's any Mario representation at all at this show. I think between Zelda and Mario, Zelda will get something, as I mentioned previously. But just like you said, because there is obviously work that's being done on the Switch 2 right now, for me, it's very hard to say that Nintendo's going to commit to anything Mario related at this point, unless it's something smaller or something, that's not, I don't want to say mainline, because I think most Mario franchises are considered mainline, like a Mario Party or something like that. But other than that, I can't see anything Mario at this Direct, Nate.
See, I think if Mario has any form of showing at this direct, it would be something like a Mario Party game. It's been a while since the last Mario Party game. They always sell exceptionally well. They're not exactly the most exciting releases, but they're nice family releases. And even with the Switch 2 looming just over the horizon, it's not as though a Mario Party game would be in that launch window. Nintendo never prioritizes it. We know ND Cube has been busy working on something, and I just wouldn't be surprised if we saw a Mario Party show up in this direct and release later this year, just to kind of fill out that holiday lineup. Because right now, Nintendo's 2024 lineup has definitely been one of, I don't want to say it's been lacking, but it has that feel of a transitionary year, as we have said in the past. We're getting a lot of those remasters. We're getting lesser known IPs come over in the form of quality games. And I think a Mario Party just kind of fills that void nicely, where it gives people little incentive and something to play with the family this holiday. And it's just a quality release that Nintendo knows they can confidently and safely go to secure that 5 million sales.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if there was going to be something Mario, it would be a Mario Party style game. Could definitely see it. I'm going to stick to my guns and say no Mario. Other than, I don't know, maybe they show us a tease of a new movie or some theme park business or something else, but Switch Mario related, I don't think so.
Now, another game that has been rumored significantly over the last couple of years is the Fire Emblem for Genealogy of the Holy War remake. This is something I have heard, and it's just a question of when will Nintendo finally announce it and release it. And approaching this direct, I haven't heard anything new about this project, so I'm kind of operating under the belief that it is not coming out this year. So I do wonder whether or not this would be the proper venue to reveal the game, and they easily could reveal it and then release it sometime in 2025. But it's also one of those games that I sit and think back on of, could they just wait till September and reveal it then and release it in 2025? How much marketing does Nintendo want to give this particular game? How significant does Nintendo view this release? And that would determine the marketing cycle around it. So I take a coin and I just kind of flip it. I could see it show up this month. I could see it easily show up later this year. It just comes down to when. This isn't a question of if, it's when does Nintendo want to reveal and release this game. And I haven't heard an update on this game in over a year. So I am purely in the dark on this at this point. Just reveal the game already, Nintendo. The sooner the better. Give Fire Emblem fans what they want. Release this fantastic entry to the franchise for modern audiences. Let us have it. Give us what we want. Please.
Yeah. So,
please.
With all that, you know that's not going to happen. So I'm going to say no Fire Emblem.
At least give us a trailer. It can release next year. I'm fine with that. Just give us something to, whet our appetite with.
Mm-hmm.
Give us a little tease, an appetizer, anything. But there is a game that Nintendo released now for well over a year that they seemingly forgot about. And that is Switch Sports.
Are we getting baseball?
I don't even think Nintendo remembers they made the game. I've never seen a game. This is going to be harsh, but I've never seen a game so grossly mismanaged as Switch Sports. The game comes out, sells exceptionally well. All you have to do is update it with some new sports, 1 or 2 a year, to keep the player base engaged. They gave us golf, and that was it.
Yep.
Where's baseball? Where is the content that made Wii Sports such a phenomenon?
Well, I'm glad
Why can't you give us that?
I'm glad you asked that question, because I think baseball is a new event that will get added at the Direct. Maybe even as a shadow drop, available right after the show or available as soon as the show is done.
I hope you're right.
This is more of a hopes and dreams thing, but it's summertime, Nate. baseball season, hot dogs, Switch Sports. We're getting that new event added. It's happening.
I hope you're right. Now I'm going to go with some of the 3DS remasters have been in headlines as well a bit this year, with some rumors talking about Nintendo has, one or two 3DS remasters planned for the Nintendo Switch. And one such game goes back a couple of years in terms of rumors when Bandai Namco had begun hiring for an unknown project, and immediately everyone attached Kid Icarus Uprising to that job listing. And that would be a fantastic game. But there is another title that I think we could potentially see for the 3DS remasters coming to Nintendo Switch, and it is one of my favorite 3DS games. And it is Kirby Planet Robobot. I think we could see a deluxe version of Kirby Planet Robobot for the Nintendo Switch get announced and revealed at the Nintendo Direct, release probably sometime in 2025, early 2025, because there's nothing safer than a Kirby game, and Planet Robobot was one of the best Kirby games to ever release, and it deserves the HD treatment. It deserves the deluxe treatment, and I want to see it at this Direct. I want to be excited to play Kirby Planet Robobot in HD. And I think a lot of Kirby fans would love to revisit this gem.
You know what? I'm going to agree with you. I think Kid Icarus Uprising is obviously a game that's been very well talked about. But, there's been some rumblings of information, about that game. But if I had to pick one, I would rather have Kirby Planet Robobot myself. That is such a great game. I would love to revisit that game in 2024. So I'm right there with you. Putting that into the universe. Let's do it.
Another thing that I think this Nintendo Direct could have is a significant NSO update, be it a new game roadmap for N64 and Game Boy Advance and all the systems that are on NSO. But I also wouldn't discount that possibility of maybe we get new hardware on NSO. I think that would kind of reinvigorate the interest that people have in Nintendo Switch Online, because when you really look at the current rollout of what we have for games, it's significantly slow. The base NSO rarely, if ever, sees a new update. Like, yes, you just got the Mega Man games added to Game Boy, but what was the last truly meaningful NES game or Super NES game?
I think before that was probably the Killer Instinct games back in the partner showcase, the kind of dump of rare games.
Which was a nice set of games.
There was Super R-Type that recently came out, which wasn't a bad drop as well. But yeah, it's, to your point, it's been quite a while, really.
It's just a question of if you had to look at new hardware to come to NSO, I'd say there's really only two candidates at this point that would make any sense. And it would be Nintendo DS, or I think if I'm Nintendo, I would go to Sega and I would get the Dreamcast on NSO.
I mean, both of those are probably the logical next steps for the NSO service. I don't think Dreamcast really fits today that it would be the new hardware drop, because let's kind of walk into that a little bit. If Dreamcast did get announced, what would be the first 4 games they would drop for that system?
Sonic Adventure, Sonic Adventure 2, Skies of Arcadia, and Shenmue.
The problem I have with Sonic Adventure is, wouldn't Sega want to just remake those as a collection, or remaster those as a collection and sell them all over again for $60 for 2 games?
I don't think the games have that much value anymore.
I'm not sure if Dreamcast fits today, not because for any technical reasons, or it's not, it doesn't make sense. It's really that I don't know if Sega wants. Sega's having this kind of resurgence right now, where they're like, "Hey, we're bringing back the old games again." We're bringing back the back catalog. That thing that they were showing off was it the Game Awards last year, where they were showing off Crazy Taxi and
yes, Jet Set and Golden Axe and Shinobi.
I personally believe, and this is just an opinion, I personally believe that Sega doesn't want to muddy the waters where they have a collection, or that they have their games on an NSO service, the Dreamcast games on an NSO service, and then they're kind of remaking these old games at the same time. So I think that Dreamcast, while it's probably something that we will see, may wait till the Switch 2. Now, DS, on the other hand, that for me is the logical next step for the NSO service. But I personally don't think that this Direct will be the venue for a new hardware announcement for NSO. Honestly, I think we're going to get like 2 games. I don't think it's going to be anything that substantial. And I personally would like to see Diddy Kong Racing on the NSO for N64. I think that's a game that I don't really see the reason why it wouldn't come to the NSO service. Obviously, Rare games have already been delivered, and Donkey Kong is a beloved icon franchise for Nintendo. Diddy Kong Racing, I think that's what we're going to get. Maybe another game as well. But beyond that, I don't see anything that major from NSO. But I do think that NSO will have a presence. But I do want to hear your thoughts on the Dreamcast, my Dreamcast take, if there's any kind of counterpoints you have to what I said.
I mean, your points definitely are valid. I think my counter would be, if I'm Sega and I am going through these remakes and remasters of games like Crazy Taxi and Jet Set Radio and such, by bringing Dreamcast to NSO and giving those original versions, I'm kind of generating hype in the brands again. Because when's the last time we had Jet Force Radio? We had them on what? Xbox 360 and PlayStation Vita. So it's been a long time. Even with Crazy Taxi on Xbox Live Arcade, it's been a while since those games really had any relevance. So if I could put them in the hands of people and just reintroduce them in a minor way via NSO, it could help when it comes time to resurrect those franchises with these new entries or the remakes in 2026, 2027, whenever Sega actually has those games come to market. But it's definitely a situation where there's a lot of logistics at play, even just viewing it as we are at the tail end of the Switch generation. So would bringing something akin to the Dreamcast to NSO really make sense at this stage and at this venture? Because we are going to have the Switch 2 announced this fiscal year and, release in 2025. Wouldn't it maybe be more pertinent to Nintendo and Sega to hold Dreamcast until the Switch 2 comes out and have it as that exclusive tier of NSO for the Switch 2?
Yeah.
So it's definitely one of those situations where does it make the most sense? And could Nintendo make a deal with Sega to bring Dreamcast over? And even when you look at the Dreamcast collection of games, just from a Sega perspective, how many true classics are there that could even translate to the modern gaming environment? There were a lot of light gun games.
Yes.
House of the Dead 2 and 3, Dynamite Cop.
Yeah. Confidential Mission as well. Virtual Cop.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of them.
There's a lot of stuff there, but I mean, I think we will get some sort of NSO update. If it's not at this June Direct, sometime this year, it's just going to be a question of how significant will it be. But I think at least an NSO roadmap for N64 and such would go a long way in just people having confidence and keeping up with their NSO subscription. Because right now, there really hasn't been that many exciting NSO drops this year. As you mentioned back in February, you did have some of the Rare games, which included Killer Instinct. And we did just have the 5 Mega Man games. but you need something more exciting. As you mentioned, Diddy Kong Racing would go a long way. Perfect Dark
Yes.
would go an even longer way, especially when we just saw the first look at the Initiative's Perfect Dark for Xbox Series at the Xbox Showcase. People watched that trailer and said, hey, I'm excited about this new Perfect Dark game. What a better joint marketing venture than to throw Perfect Dark on NSO this month and give longtime fans an opportunity to revisit a classic. So something NSO in 2024. It's just a question of, will it be at this direct? Will it just be a random Twitter drop one day? Will it be in the September direct? But I think we definitely see something NSO related before the year concludes. Before we get to Prime 4, I think going into this direct, and even for Nintendo's 2024 in general, given what we've kind of given as predictions up to this point, Nintendo's holiday is vacant right now in terms of a significant release. I think Nintendo has to come out with a couple of big surprises for this year. And while something like an F-Zero GX could surprise people, I think they have to go even further than that.
Absolutely.
Nothing on the tier of like a 3D Mario game or a AAA mainline Zelda game, but something that's just going to catch people by surprise. And just one or two games that come out later this year that are of quality that gets people excited. Because right now, Nintendo and Sony are just kind of in that lull. But you can understand why Nintendo's in the lull. You're at the end of your console generation. You are transitioning to your next generation development teams for your new hardware. But you still have to deliver something. So I think going into this direct, Nintendo will surprise us with something. It's just a question of what could it be? And I think it's going to be something that nobody could possibly predict. Maybe it's a random IP we have forgotten about.
It's probably Yoshi's Woolly's World from the Wii U.
That's Switch. A great game.
Never came out on the Switch.
Yeah, it's a great game, but that wouldn't surprise anyone with excitement. People would say, cool.
What about? I mean, what else would there be then?
See, that's the point. You couldn't predict it. Just going to catch you off guard.
Urban Champion.
I'm about to boot you from the show. Don't you ever mention that franchise again. It's bad enough Nintendo keeps re-releasing it.
Okay, they make a modern remake of Star Tropics. I love Star Tropics, by the way. I will hear no disrespect about that game.
I will not speak on Star Tropics. I feel like that's a game that people keep just bringing up, but nobody played it.
No, you're right. No one did play it. It sold okay, but that was a long time ago.
But, I mean, let's use Star Tropics as that example. Like, what if they just came out of nowhere? And it was Monolith Soft, brand new Star Tropics game. Like, wow, who would have predicted that?
Mm-hmm.
And it comes out later this year, like something of that caliber, but something better than Star Tropics.
Right.
But like something like that just comes out of nowhere, catches you off guard and be like, whoa, where did that come from? I'm excited. I can't wait to play that later this year. I think Nintendo has something like that in the direct.
I think you're right. It's just the $1 million question is, what is it and what would have that impact? We'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, there's definitely some, a few more surprises that we still have yet to figure out what they could be. And you know what? That makes me happy because I like going into a direct kind of unsure about everything that's going to happen, So I like it when Nintendo kind of calls an audible, and switches things up a little bit. So yeah, hopefully that surprise game announcement is a good one.
Now we have to bring up the elephant in the room.
Oh God.
Retro Studios, Metroid Prime. What do we think?
Okay. Metroid Prime 4. You know what? It's easier to say, well, this has to be the end of the closeout for the show, right? Because it's Metroid Prime. We've been waiting literally 7 years and counting for this game. But history tells us there is a very good chance that it may not even turn up at this direct because it never has in previous ones when we were almost certain that we felt like it would have some type of presence, even if it was just a development update. Absolutely nothing. All we have is a PNG file. That's all we have. With that said, Nate, I do think Metroid Prime 4 will make an appearance at this direct. However, I don't think its appearance will be anything major as far as substance in this game. And what I mean by that is we may see some nice pre-rendered or potentially some in-engine cutscene of the game. And it's going to flash a sign at the end that says 2025. And I think that's all we're going to hear about Metroid Prime 4 at this direct. However, we will get a consolation prize because I think it's time that we did see Prime 2 Remaster make an appearance as well. Just to let everyone know that Metroid Prime 4 fans, you're not getting the game in 2024. You're going to have to wait a little bit longer, but we are going to make sure that you're taken care of, and we're going to repeat the success of the Prime 1 Remaster all over again and hand you Prime 2 Remaster potentially as a shadow drop, but probably not, let's be honest. It's probably something that will come later in the third quarter of this year. So I think that's what I would expect to see. I think we will see Metroid Prime 4, but it really won't be what fans are expecting to see. I think it's really just more of a, hey, we're still around. Here's some cinematic, and here's a 2025 year for you to think about.
I agree on the notion of a 2025 release. We're too deep into the year now for them to release it this holiday.
Yep, I agree. Too deep into the year.
Had they announced it last September or shown it in February of this year, then I would say holiday 2024 was on the table at that point, even if they didn't date it, let's say back in February. But now in the second half of June, I don't see 2024 in the cards at all at this point for this game.
Yep.
It's going to be a 2025 release. If the game shows at this direct, I think it has to go further than what you have detailed. I think we have to see a trailer of fair significance. We have to see a trailer that gives us a vibe in terms of narrative. It has to give us the tone of the game, where we're going, who's the villains, do we have allies, stuff of that nature. Because right now, we know nothing about Metroid Prime 4. We know nothing about its narrative. We know nothing about its characters beyond Samus. We know nothing of the direction that this game is going to take us on. Is it linked to the original trilogy? Is it a continuation of the trilogy? Is it a continuation of Metroid Prime Hunters? Is it a continuation of Federation Force? What is this canon or the story going to be based upon? We don't know. We know nothing of this game beyond its existence. And this is foreign territory for us when it comes to a game of this caliber. When it came to Tears of the Kingdom, when we first saw that trailer, it set the tone. It showed Link and Zelda going down the cavern and coming to the petrified corpse of Ganondorf.
Yeah.
But we had an idea of, okay, look, the kingdom is flying. It's going to the sky. Ganondorf is here. We knew what the game was taking us in terms of a direction. Metroid Prime 4, we don't know. So when you finally show the game for the first time since showing an insignificant PNG file, it has to be heavy. It has to be something we can sink our teeth into.
Okay.
Where those who love the lore can analyze every frame and find details to report on so we have an idea of what exactly the game is going for.
So what I'm hearing you say is that based on that, and you're right, I mean, it's been such a long time. If they do bring Metroid to a direct, it has to wow us. It has to really, it's almost an apology for waiting so long, right? So you really have to throw a lot at your audience and get them kind of back on board with Metroid. But with all that said, it doesn't sound like you think that Metroid Prime 4 will be at this direct based on what you said, because if it does show at a direct and it has to leave that really lasting impression of a game that's been in development for over 7 years and we've heard nothing from, then if we are saying 2025, then it's probably not the right time. So am I right in saying that you don't believe it's going to be at this direct? That's pretty big.
I mean, I'm of two minds on it being at this direct. It's still going to be a Switch game.
That's right.
It hasn't changed.
Yep.
It's still coming out on the Switch. So this would be a fine time to finally give it that look. Even with it coming out next year, this is a good time to do it. On the other token, I just have that mentality of maybe the game's coming out in 2025 because Nintendo and Retro have come to that conclusion of let's make it a cross-gen game. Let's have it day and date on Switch and Switch 2. Let's have it enhanced on Switch 2. Not fully enhanced, nothing that's going to take 100% advantage of the capabilities of the new hardware, but enhanced in a similar way that Twilight Princess was on the Wii compared to the GameCube version, or Breath of the Wild was on the Wii U compared to the Switch. Just some enhancements here and there, maybe little clearer of a picture, maybe more stable frame rate, some minor texture details, stuff of that. And that's the one thing I just cannot resolve myself with, is that this game has been in development for such a long time, and with it coming out in 2025, doesn't it just feel as though it is better suited as a cross-gen day and date with the Switch 2? The Switch still gets the game. They're not taking it away from the current base. They're giving the Switch 2 buyers incentive in that launch window to play Metroid Prime 4 in a slightly better state.
Yeah.
And that's where, if it doesn't show up in this direct, I think some people are going to have that mentality of, we have to have a conversation of what is going on with this game. Is it in trouble? Is it in peril? Is something going wrong? Whereas I think I'm going to view it as a case of Nintendo has deliberately chosen to hold off showing the game because they don't want to give us the release date, because the release date is when the Switch 2 is coming out. Yeah. And they don't want to give us that release date now and have that speculation before they are able to formally unveil the Switch 2 on their own terms. So if Metroid Prime 4 shows up in September, it wouldn't shock me, but it also wouldn't surprise me to see it at this direct either. It really comes down to what they're doing with this game. I just don't know if I can rationalize to myself that it will exclusively release on the Switch and not have a Switch 2 version. Because at this point, I think it has to be on both platforms.
I think you're probably right, especially given the fact that Metroid Prime, or Metroid, is never been really a big seller for Nintendo. And this would definitely maximize its sales potential having it available on both. I don't know. I mean, we're throwing darts at a dartboard at this point with this Metroid Prime stuff. Like, I think that the only thing that we probably both agree on is that it doesn't seem likely it's coming out this year. But as far as how Nintendo kind of reintroduces Metroid Prime 4 to its audience, that's the $1 million question. I kind of feel like they're going to treat this more like a Bayonetta 3 thing. Remember how Bayonetta 3 was kind of lost for, wasn't as long as Metroid Prime, but it was gone for like 3 or 4 years maybe. And they kind of showed a trailer of it, and it didn't really land, I guess, the way that maybe they felt like it would. But then they showed us another deep dive, if you recall. Was that another direct or something else? I don't remember exactly. And that showed a lot better. And I was like, okay, this game looks like it's finally taken form, and it's looking a lot better than what I initially thought. Look, I think Nintendo, I think they have a lot of work to do with Metroid Prime. You know, they have to really play their cards right on this. The idea of it being a cross-generation game that launches day and date on 2 platforms, that makes a lot of sense to me. If the Switch 2 is just around the corner and this game is literally the last game that Nintendo is, shipping out the door, then that's probably the way it's going to play out. I could see that happening, but I am hopeful that we will hear from the Metroid Prime 4 related stuff at this Direct. But what about Metroid Prime 2 Remaster? Do you think that will have a presence either way at this showcase? I think it's going to happen.
I mean, it's been over a year since Metroid Prime 1 Remaster came out, so I think Metroid Prime 2 Remaster would be a good release at this point, especially it really comes down to that story of Metroid Prime 4. If it's a continuation of the trilogy, I think you kind of have to get the trilogy out on the Switch. And, Metroid Prime 2 is a very pivotal entry to that trilogy, obviously. And, I'm just battling with those thoughts of, I want to see Metroid Prime 4 at this Direct. It's just a question of, does Nintendo view it as a necessity to have it at this Direct?
Right.
If I'd probably say I'm 51-49 in favor of it being here. It's just a question of, you have to show us something of value. It cannot be a simplistic 20-second trailer that just shows Samus jump out of a ship and then it pans around her visor and we see it turn, digitized, and then it says Metroid Prime 4 2025. Because if that's all it is, that's the equivalent of what Ubisoft did with Prince of Persia and the JPEG to say 2026. There's nothing tangible to take away from that beyond, the game's coming out next year. Wow. Thank you for finally acknowledging the game.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving us a release target. But what am I supposed to take away from that? I need to see the direction of the game. I need to see what the game is going to be and what it's looking to convey to the player and what it wants to deliver. I need something to take away from it.
I mean, the other thing that could very easily happen, Nate, is that Takahashi-san could basically say, we know that you've been patiently waiting Metroid Prime 4. We just asked you to wait a little bit longer. We'll have more to show soon. But in the meantime, check this out, and it's Prime 2 Remaster. And that's what we get on All About Metroid at this Direct.
That's not enough for me.
Well, I mean, not enough for a lot of people. And I think anything less than, some type of trailer with cinematics and gameplay would be considered a disappointment. But we'll have to see.
The only reason I have a 51-49 favor that it's here is because the end of the month, Nintendo has the general meeting of its shareholders. So maybe they want to have a little more of their coming lineup detailed.
Yeah.
To have something to present to them on slides saying, look at our 2025 release schedule. Here's Metroid Prime 4 or something to that effect. Just to have those long-term projects have release dates. And I think that's what gives me that favoritism for it to show in June versus showing up in something like September.
Right.
But I just need something significant from it. I don't want this could have been an email type of update. And even if them walking out saying, oh yeah, we know you want an update, but we can't give you an update right now. We'll give you an update in the near future. I don't want that. If you have nothing to give me now, I'd rather you say nothing.
Yeah.
Either come with deliverables or don't show up.
Yeah.
And that's harsh, but this game went to retro in 2019. It's been 5 years, which is within the standard development timeline. It's not as though it's taking too long to develop. It's just we aren't really in the dark this long when it comes to a project of this nature. We get a trailer a year or 2 years before it releases. And in the case of Metroid Prime 4, we just haven't had any update of value since them announcing that it was going to retro. And then they gave us the very minimal update around the time of Metroid Dread, where they said, hey, development of Metroid Prime 4 is still ongoing. It's just time to give us something significant where we can walk away and say, okay, I have confidence in what Retro is doing. The new direction of Metroid Prime 4 is exciting. And that's the other thing. We don't even know the direction of the game.
No, we know nothing about it.
Is it first person?
Right.
Is it third person? Is it a new form of person?
Is it open world? Is it linear based?
Right.
What is it?
We have no vision on anything. And that can be both exciting and concerning.
Right.
So, once the direct airs and we either get a look at the game or we don't, it'll be something that we discuss in our reaction.
Well, hopefully it makes an appearance. It would be nice to get a deep dive look at Metroid Prime 4 on the Switch. Because I personally, it's one of the games of the system that I've been wanting to play since it was announced. So hopefully we'll get a look at it.
Now, to end the predictions, we're going to do Will It Into Existence, or we're going to give the universe some of our energy to make these projects a real thing. And you can start.
Well, I already put Watch Dogs out there for third party, and that's a big one for me. But the game that I've always wanted to see at a Nintendo Direct on the Switch, pretty much since the day the Switch was announced, was Eternal Darkness. And I think that Eternal Darkness will not be at the Direct, and it's probably not in Nintendo's plans. Never has been. However, I'm going to will it into existence. Nintendo knows that Eternal Darkness is a beloved franchise, and there's a bit of a mini resurgence with these kind of horror style games coming back right now. There's Silent Hill 2, Nate, coming out later this year. Clock Tower is being developed by Way Forward. It's being brought back as well. So Eternal Darkness is my game. I'm willing it into existence. Nintendo, I know you're listening. Let's make it happen. Now let's turn it over to you. What do you got for you? What's your will into existence prediction for this Direct?
I'm going to go with an all-time classic with memorable characters, addictive gameplay, and challenge that few games compare. I'm talking about Punch-Out. I want to see Gabby J make a return, and Bear Hugger, and Bald Bull, and Soda Popinski. I want to see them all make a return this generation, and I want to knock them out. I just want a new Punch-Out game. The last one was on the Wii from Next Level Games.
Yeah.
And, it was really good on the Wii. I think it would just be a really fun time to bring it on the Switch. I mean, you have the Joy-Cons, you have HD Rumble. Yeah. You could have the impact on each Joy-Con as you're landing a punch. And then when you build up your super, the Joy-Con can shake a little bit. And then you just boom with a nice uppercut. You have that impact in the controllers be felt. I'm going to will it into existence. I want a new Punch-Out game. It's been too long. It is a fantastic franchise. It is a classic. It is just one of Nintendo's iconic franchises that, be it a retro gamer or someone who came into gaming on the Wii, this is a franchise you recognize, and you have Little Mac and Smash Brothers, and I'm sure some people are wondering who exactly is Little Mac, who is Doc Lewis, who are these characters? Just give us a Punch-Out game. I don't care if it is eShop only for $20 and it takes 3 hours to beat. That's sufficient. Make it a budget release, but just give me Punch-Out again. That's all I'm asking.
I like Punch-Out. I'd like to see it. In many ways, the Switch is almost the perfect platform to have a Punch-Out game on, with the reasons you said. The Joy-Cons, you could detach them and use them as makeshift, boxing gloves. The HD Rumble aspect of it, the gyro aspect of it, could be awesome if they did it right. So that's probably why it's not going to happen. But let's will it. Let's will it into existence, Nate. Punch-Out, like it.
That's right, Gabby J. I'm coming for you. We will have a Streamlabs dedicated episode in the very near future, so you can donate to the Streamlabs link in the description below. Donate any dollar amount, ask a question, we will answer it. Donate $100 or more, and we'll dedicate the episode to you. And with that, I'd like to thank MVG for joining me as always.
Thanks for having me on, Nate. Always a pleasure. And roll on the direct. I'm looking forward to it.
Let us know your thoughts on the Nintendo Direct and some of your predictions and expectations in the comment section below, and what you thought of our predictions, if we were too optimistic or perhaps too pessimistic, and what your hopes are for Metroid Prime 4. And also let us know what you think of our new banging outro, which will start in just a few seconds. But be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And until then, continue to embrace the hate.
Make the hate rockin' hard, MVG jumping on